Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we welcome back Nemo, CEO of Horizon State, to the channel. How you going, Nemo?
Hey Alex, good to be here again. How are you?
Very good, thanks. And first of all, I guess well done on surviving crypto winter. We're going to go over everything you guys have been up to and talk about the future. So I know that must have been pretty tough, like it was for all crypto startups.
Yeah, definitely so. We've had to reduce our spending, reduce expenditure. We changed the model that we work a little bit from a lot of full-time employees to quite a few people who work part-time, and that is fine. But as you said, we survived the winter. Um, We came out late, very late last year with a working product. We have customers using it, both in Australia, New Zealand, and a little bit overseas as well. So 2019, second half of 2019 is where we really are going to push hard on sales and try to get more and more users onto the system. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I threw my support behind you guys in a big way because it was a great mission, the charity and that sort of thing. And I said it was underrated because you only raised a small amount of funds, and I think people sometimes really disconnect the fact from that money needs to pay staff in the real world, and they just expect everything to happen at once. But the fact is, we're tech startups, 1 year old in this industry that's really volatile. So yeah, sometimes part-time staff and downsizing is just the reality, but you guys have done really well now and you've got the working product and some good news. Do you want to tell us more about that HLC government-funded project?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. The reason people invest money, VCs invest money in startups, is that you need to pay your staff, you need to develop, and stuff like that. We did raise little, relatively speaking, and I think we did well. And while we're not cash flow positive, we have started getting revenue in. So the product works, the people paying for it. Hopefully, just more and more as we go along. Um, Right, HLC. HLC is a group, is a business in New Zealand who does a lot of projects around the country, and all of the projects are taking old state houses, basically rebuilding state houses, making them new, warm, and applicable for for the actual weather in New Zealand. New Zealand has a tendency of thinking we're in California in terms of how we build houses, and the weather doesn't agree. So that's what they.
It sounds a bit like the beachfront properties in Hobart in Tasmania.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Um, so what they do is they take the old state houses. Some of them, most of them are around 60 years old. They graze them down and rebuild it. When they rebuild, one other thing that they do is they sort of rebuild the communities as well. So more parks, more public spaces, cafes, libraries, schools if they're needed, etc. And that's good, right? This is building communities in a way that's planned,
Yeah.
rather than just stacking houses everywhere, which seems to be the way we do things lately.
Yeah.
Um, so the current project, they are working with Housing New Zealand. Housing New Zealand is a government of New Zealand, is a Department of Housing. They're in charge of making sure people in New Zealand have houses and don't sleep on the streets, and that those houses are warm
Yeah.
and keep them healthy. So together with them and another incentive here in New Zealand, which is building, I think the incentive is building 100,000 new homes in 10 years, which is insane.
Yeah.
Uh, so they're all joined together, and they want to do it right. They want to build the houses and they rebuild the community features right, and therefore they do a lot of community engagement. They have their budget for community engagement is quite large. The entire budget for the project is $1.5 billion, which is quite substantial.
Mm.
Um, and with community engagement, they do a lot of face-to-face meetings, a lot of town hall meetings, a lot of in-depth interviews, a lot of tools. Horizon State is not the only tool being used. There are other tools that complement what we do. They are using Horizon State to get formal opinions from people. So at the beginning, what they do is they'll have a bunch of people walking around the suburbs that's going to be built, walking around it with tablets in their hands and the Horizon State system on there. they're going to be approaching people and getting them to answer questions about the community, about what they want, over a period of a few months.
Yeah.
Those questions, they're going to be used by HLC to figure out what it is that the community want, what is important to them. Is it public transport? Is it crime? Is it education, etc., etc.? What can they do?
Yeah.
There has been a vocal group already in Porirua. Porirua is the city where this is happening. There has been a vocal group already which said, hey, this huge project is going ahead and no one has talked to us. There was no community engagement, and that was right on time, because HLC were able to turn around the very next day and say, hey, not only are we doing engagement, here is how we're doing it. It's a local company. People are right here in Porirua. You can walk up to their office and talk to them, see what they do. So that was really good. And then after the first few weeks, where we sort of proved that the system worked for them, that the platform worked the way they wanted to, they are going to also open it up as a proper web application. So it's not only people walking around with tablets and whoever it is that they hit, but there are also other mechanisms that they use and that they are going to load into the platform just to achieve the visibility and the accountability. So, for example, they're going to have weekly town hall meetings where people can discuss, and the results of these discussions are going to be captured on paper. Are then going to be introduced back into the Horizon State platform just to be able to capture the entire process. So it's not only a web application, it's also that medium. I suppose that's basically where it is.
That's a good rundown. I was going to say, have you guys found that you've pivoted much from crypto winter and that sort of thing to more commercial versus these community focused projects now, or how's that sort of played out?
Excellent question. So when we started, and a bit like I suppose the other blockchain voting companies, they like of votes, etc. The appeal of changing democracy or changing the tools of democracy and getting that ballot box that is blockchain based and that is uncorruptible and people can vote and they can vote from their phones, etc. It is huge, right? We all want democracy to work better. We all want our representatives to be true representatives and be accountable and that dream, which is great. But I think once we started work and once we started talking to people and we met with the government of Gibraltar in mid 2018, and they wanted to run blockchain voting, and it didn't eventuate. But what you find out is that there's a lot of issues, not all of them technical, but a lot of issues with people really, really feeling that any discussion about changing the way we vote has to be a very intense, very deep dive discussion, very inclusive as well. No one is going to try and run blockchain voting on a large scale. That hasn't really been done yet. So from a business perspective, from our perspective, right, we had a system where you can do that, but you then realize, well, to be honest, the customers are just not there yet, and rightfully so. As a country, even as a small country, like New Zealand, I would be a lot more happy to go ahead with someone like IBM or Microsoft or Oracle to run point on such a thing, the general election. Not a 1-3-year-old startup no one heard of with a strange name. And running on blockchain as well. You can't ask people to make two huge steps at the same time, which is fine. So, like you said, we didn't pivot in the sense that we have changed what we're doing completely. We pivoted our focus. So we changed our focus to be more commercial. There's a lot of voting going on in commercial entities. There's AGMs, there's shareholders voting, there's members vote, there's even collective agreements are being voted on. There's definitely votes like we saw at the beginning of the year in South Australia. It is a government customer, but it's not a general election. So they elected a forum for to support the government, and that is fine. And what we find is that a lot of people, a lot of institutions, they are happy to try. They really want to try, but they really want to find the right cause or the right way to try blockchain voting or electronic voting. Some of them, are still paper based anyway.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going. And there's a lot more of that than government. So even from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but that's a great start anyway, and a lot of startups are finding that. I think you've got to do whatever you can to get that first revenue in, and you've got a working product and you've got revenue now, so I think that's great. And then I think the horizons will expand further on down the line, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, every customer we sign up, even customers we don't sign up but we talk to, you see that they want to do something. You see that sometimes they can, sometimes regulation or their own constitution prevents them from doing it, but the idea is there, the thinking is there, and if they're not going to do it, they're going to introduce us to someone else who's interested, and that has happened. So currently, from a pipeline perspective, which is that's all a startup wants, right? Especially a startup that doesn't sit on, say, $80-90 million that they paid before they had anything. All you want is a pipeline, and from a pipeline perspective, could always be better, but I'm pretty happy with where we are now, and I think over the next few months, we'll definitely be able to show quite a few more customers. I mean, HLC itself, the project is 25 years. We have signed up for an initial 6-month term, and they've already asked for 2 more features to be added to the platform, because they're looking forward. So I'm pretty confident that once those 6 months are up, they're going to sign up for more.
I've spoken to other crypto startups as well that have been sort of pivoted by the customers, but that's almost a good thing, giving them what they want, and they're signing on, and if they're paying you, then give them what they want.
Well, at the end of the day, and it happens in a lot of tech startups. It happened to, even to Uber and the likes, right? You have an idea, what you think the world needs, and then you go out there and the world goes like, that's a great idea. What we really need is something completely different.
I agree.
And then you pivot, and then we call it a pivot, but at the end of the day, it's listening to the customers, which is something that was really nice to have done at the beginning.
I guess taking a step back and talking about that technology, how do you see that entering of the data onto that blockchain in the real world? So it's the problem that faces all blockchain startups in all different industries, and we're seeing oracles spring up now. So with your voting, and as you say, if they're going door to door with an iPad, in the future, do you see biometrics and everyone has a smartphone and that digital identity on a blockchain, or are they still going to be going to voting booths and getting their ID scanned off? So how do you guys approach all that?
I think this is from a voting perspective, right? This is the main issue. And there's a few approaches, but I think before we talk about the approaches, we need to talk about the main issue. And the main issues are 2. In a lot of countries, identifying people is hard. Is really, really hard. In New Zealand, and I guess it's the same in Australia, it's relatively easy to go and vote as if you were someone else. In fact, in New Zealand, your vote can be traced back to you exactly for that reason. So you go there. It's a paper vote. You put your vote down. But if a court decides that they suspect you, they can take that vote out and trace it back to you, because there is no real way to identify a person. There is no form of identification that you have to have. So, and that's a huge issue. And in Scotland, for example, where we are trying to get a pilot running for the yesterday movement around the Constitution right now, this is one of the issues. How do you identify people when there's no mandated form of identity? Right? That goes into who owns your identity, or what is identity, etc. So that's a huge discussion. A few times.
I mean, I've read about in developing countries in Africa, 6 different forms of ID and that sort of thing.
Oh, it's much easier there. So I'm talking to a country in Africa now for quite a large project that they want to do, and there is no issue if I did it because it's that type of country.
Yeah.
It's easier. So that aside, voting from your phone is easy, and potentially when you have identity, we can identify you through the phone. You can use fingerprint. You can use you can lock your eSIM, which isn't widely used right now, but will be soon. And I know that there's a project in Montpellier when they do exactly that. They are working on identity in eSIM. But then for election, for high stake election, that opens to other avenues which you don't have right now. And one is coercion. Right? If you vote from your phone and I can be there when you vote, I can make sure that you vote, the way I want it. I want you to vote. And there's really no way for you to vote differently, if I'm smart enough about it. And the other issue is selling of the vote. If you put your vote on a blockchain, and that's another discussion. When you put your vote on chain, you want to be able to see that what is registered is actually what you voted. But if you can see it, then you can prove it to me, so you can really sell your vote to me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think there is a good solution to that at all. So the solution in the foreseeable future, with electronic voting or blockchain voting, even if you do end up voting from your phone, I think the solution will be for you to be at the polling booth and do it there. So we can make sure that you're isolated, that no one is standing over your shoulder, etc.
They might have facial recognition as we walk into the booths, and email, sort of going down that path in a couple of places, which is scary. But the tech's out there, I guess.
The technology is there, right? I mean, you can do passportless flights now in some airports, and that's a technology by NEC, which is a bit scary.
Yeah. You keep going, sorry, Nemo. It's just cutting out a little bit, but you're right.
That's right. Anyway, where was I going with it? I forgot the question.
I'm on to the next question anyway, Nemo. I want to dive into the token. So that's always something that people were interested about, and obviously price-wise, tokens have suffered a lot in crypto winter across the board, but there was the utility that I always look for when I research the project. And I guess just speaking in general terms, it's been tough for a lot of projects when ideally you want these partnerships using the token, but a lot of times people aren't familiar with cryptocurrency and whatnot. So it's sort of, you have to almost do it on the back end behind the scenes. But the token utility is directly linked to your platform and how it all works, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I think over the last 2.5 years, a lot of us matured in terms of our approach to tokens, and security and utility discussion aside, what a token does is an interesting thing. Right? If it was the commodity market, think gold and diamonds, right? And then let's try and compare that to Bitcoin and or Ethereum and tokens. Diamonds are really a lifestyle expense. They have no value like gold. At the moment you bought them, the value drops. If you try to sell diamonds back to a merchant, you get less than half than what you paid for it, unlike gold.
Yeah.
And tokens, most tokens I think are a bit like that. And time will tell. Time will tell for each and every token. For us, and this is one of the reasons that our token mechanics work the way they work, is it sort of makes sure that if you are a token holder with Horizon State, we are with you, because the token mechanics make sure that the company and the token holders, their fates are tied, really. And, we knew all along that it's going to be difficult to convince customers of the type of the customers that we go after to pay us in crypto or to buy tokens and use the tokens. And then how do you even calculate the price? You can't do one token per vote, because in countries like New Zealand and Australia, this is insane. And then in countries like India or that African country I talked about, they're going to look at it and say, well, we can do a vote for 1 cent.
Yeah.
Your token is 50 cents, hopefully. Why would they do that? So it's pretty difficult to do it this way, and that's how we came up with the idea of saying, okay, let's let's talk to the customers in the currency they understand. They understand dollar, they understand rupee, they understand whatever it is. Now we'll price it based on the customer, based on the country, to make it competitive in every jurisdiction. And then just to make sure that the tokens are being used the way we wanted them to be used, then we convert that payment, that fiat, we convert it to tokens, and then the rest of the mechanics, 5% go to charities, which is now through the Binance Charity Foundation. Thank you, by the way.
That's right. Yeah.
And then up to 5% more of specific projects go into public works, and up to 8% get locked up, etc., etc.
And that's what really drew me to it in the first place. I guess when I look at that token utility, it doesn't matter to me what exchange it's on in the long run, because once these projects have partnerships and they're being used, it all looks after itself long term.
Yeah, and that was exactly the goal of the token mechanics, right? And there's definitely room for discussion around, did we get a percentage right? Why is it 5%? Why is it up to 8%, etc., etc.? But at the end of the day, it's the path. It's working together. Token holders and company, we are tied.
Yeah.
And if the token, if the value rises, good. Everybody is happy, and
including.
But even if it doesn't, it's still okay, because real money is coming in.
Yeah. So what are the next steps, Nemo, or rounding up here? How do you see the future going? Do you think we're out of crypto winter, and is that good for all sort of blockchain companies? And are you getting more interest every month now, or how's it all looking?
Yeah. So there's two things in terms of crypto. I think you're right. I think we're out of crypto winter. I don't know if we'll ever get to crypto summer again.
Yeah.
But I think the last year or so, 13, 14 months, what we saw a very rapid maturity in the market. You see a lot more people who know what they're doing, who know what they're talking about, who don't just buy rumors and etc., and are looking for real users. And also on the other hand, you see a lot less pipe dreams. I think you don't see as many companies say, we'll use blockchain to register birth and deaths and marriages, right? And then you're like, okay, so say you register birth and you register identity on a blockchain that can't be altered, etc., but that really means that there are problems down the road which we can't foresee right now, and we don't have the mechanisms to protect against them. So think even witness protection, right? How do you change a person's identity where the previous identity is right there on chain, right? And so there's a lot of stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Other thing that I realized over the last few months, being a lot more involved here in New Zealand in various city councils, various government organizations, because as you market and sell your product, you get to know these people. During late 2017, early 2018, quite a few of the councils here in New Zealand were experimenting with blockchain. On their own, they were doing stuff. They hired people to develop proof of concepts. Christchurch had a project for land use, if I remember correctly. But so, we always talk about adoption and about the maturity of the market, and how can we get more people in? How can we get the establishment onto blockchain? Which is strange, because we also, on the other hand, say Bitcoin is against the establishment and all of that. So, it's a bit of a split brain here. But they're already there, and you see it with Amazon and Microsoft and IBM all jumping on the bandwagon, etc. So I think the level of hype that we had is, I'd be happy if it comes back, but I don't think it will at that level. I do think it will be a lot more sustained.
Yeah.
Within more users will be found, more customers are going to use the technology, and more larger companies are going to get in onto it, which is good for the ecosystem. What I see from the customers we talk to, as opposed to, say, even the beginning of 2018, so only 1 year ago, when we tried to go and sell voting or decision making on chain to people, quite a few didn't know what blockchain was. I mean, maybe we didn't get in front of the right people, but quite a few didn't know what blockchain was. And quite a few of those who did only knew about selling drugs and buying them.
Yeah.
It's a good use case at that time.
Yeah.
And then other people, they didn't care. Like blockchain, not blockchain, they didn't care. They just wanted electronic voting.
Yeah.
Today, everybody we talk to knows what blockchain is. They may have a good opinion, a bad opinion. They might like it, they might not like it, but everybody knows what it is. So it's no longer in a dark corner. And I know that a lot, especially here in New Zealand, a lot of the government entities and local governments, they had their conferences and talks and workshops on blockchain, on what it can do for governance and what they need to know, etc., etc. So it's definitely out there. It's definitely a much easier sale today than it was. And if what we are seeing is indicative of what other companies in this space are seeing, then I think the adoption will go up. Maybe not, maybe not in a 50% of the world in 2 years, but more and more people are going to use it, and for good uses, for good systems. Yeah,
I tend to agree, and I do hope so. So it's a noble mission, Nemo. I do wish you guys all the best with it. I'm sure there's more good news around the corner for you guys. But any final thoughts for everyone at home?
No, I think maybe I've been saying it for so long. There's a difference between an investor and speculator. Decide what they are. If you're a speculator, then there's a lot of projects out there that are definitely for you. If you're an investor, investment is a longer time frame. Nothing saying you can't be both in different projects.
Yeah.
But if you want to come and be a token holder at Horizon State, it's definitely an investment. You're not going to be able to flip it in 2 or 3 months. It's a long-term thing, because we're trying to tackle a really, really large problem and complex, and we're trying to do it as well as we can.
Patience tends to be rewarded in the crypto game, so that's a good spot to finish on, I think. Thanks so much for joining us today, mate.
Thanks very much, Alex, and thanks for your support throughout the last couple of years.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
There you guys.